I am Jen Hurd. I am the West Coast Sales Manager for Genuine Origin. You have probably been hanging out with me in my kitchen during some Instagram cuppings, and you have been hearing my voice drone on and on through these webinars, so here we are again. Thank you so much for joining us. Today we are very excited to be joined by our team from Costa Rica, and we are going to do, we're going to have a whole bunch of conversations about some of the coffees we're seeing, some of the things people are working on, how the very, very exciting Jaguar project is doing and where it came from. As always, we're going to have a couple of polls. Keep an eye out for those. And we will still have the Q&A function down at the bottom. If you have a question, submit it there, and we will either get to it through the conversation or we'll hold some questions till the end. If you miss anything, we will archive this on SoundCloud and YouTube afterward. And if you missed any of the previous webinars, you will find them there as well. So that being said, it's time to go around the room. And as I said, I'm Jen, West Coast Sales Manager. Rafa, you're next on my screen. So if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Thank you, Jen. Hello to everyone. Thank you for having me here today. Excited to share a little bit of my beloved country with all the guests and everyone who's registered into this webinar.
And what do you do, Rafa?
Thank you. I'm the Deputy General Manager for Volcafe Costa Rica.
Thank you. All right, Helena, you're next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Helena Hughley. I work here at Volcafe Costa Rica as well, and I work in both the trading and sustainability departments.
Cool. Thank you. All right, Max, you're next.
Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is Max from Costa Rica also. I'm a coffee trader here in Volcafe and also, let's say, a farmer through the family.
Thank you. Rob, you're up. You're muted. Drink more coffee.
Okay, Rob Solkow, digital marketer at Genuine Origin.
Thank you. All right, Riley, you're up.
Hi, everybody. My name is Riley Thompson. I work for Volcafe Costa Rica as the leader of the farmer support department.
Thank you. And last but not least, Carlos.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Carlos Sanchez. I'm the manager for the dry mill, and I'm also a farmer on behalf of Monte Alto.
Yay, which if any of you joined in on my cupping, you heard me talk very highly of that coffee because it's delicious. If you missed that, it's still on our Instagram. You can scroll back a little bit and see it, or it should be on the highlights. So we'll save the rest of the business for the end, but Rafa, if you want to get in a little bit on kind of the structure of Costa Rica and what that looks like, let's do it.
Okay, thank you, Jen. I'll try to be brief. You know that it's hard for me to be objective when I'm talking about my beloved country, so I'll try to stick to the time frame. Well, you know, as we all Costa Ricans say, Costa Rica is pura vida land, which means don't worry, be happy kind of a philosophy kind of way, which is part of the idiosyncrasy of our country. I'll go through a little bit of them, but all of this will be components of our reality as a country and all the elements of value that would like to be part of our Costa Rican coffee. So in general, we're a small country. Just to give you an idea of proportion, we're 1/3 of the size of Louisiana. However, we have around 5 million people. So small, but highly populated. So that is one of the challenges of the industry as a whole. It means that we have a very little land and a lot of people living here. However, we still have around 84,000 hectares of coffee planted still, fighting against the urban development. During the 80s and 90s, Costa Rica was the country with the highest productivity per hectare. And on those days, which was around 35 quintals per hectare. Today is around 26, more or less. The rule of thumb is that we have around 45 to 50,000 farmers. That number tends to change between year to year, but we want to think that it will keep on growing, hopefully, and that's what we fight for every day. Over 200 mills, large ones, small ones, micro lots, co-ops, a little bit of everything, and 63 roasters registered for the local consumption. We are the second producing country in terms of consumption per capita. So being a producing country, we're still very high in terms of consumption, which also makes us very proud of. And some of the informations, when I start talking about quintals, that is 100 pounds. So we start to speak the same language. You will hear us talking about fanega, which is the volume measure for the cherry. We're one of the few, we're the only country in the world in which we measure the coffee by volume of cherry instead of weight. This way we encourage the pickers to choose the ripest, because the ripest the cherry, the bigger the size. So that is all from the beginning. Our whole chain is designed to have higher priority on quality rather than quantity. Elena, if we can go. Again, this is just a snapshot of our country. Small, but big in heart, very narrow. That gives us that although the land extension is more, we have influence not only from the Pacific, but also from the Atlantic, and because the highest area in the country is in the middle. So that would allow us to have a lot of coffee regions with different cup profiles. So although, again, we're small, we have a lot of different types and profiles for the palette of you, beloved consumers, and to keep it interesting for you, just right from the terroir, from the base, from the nature. Okay, we have 7 provinces from which we have 8 main coffee regions that we will go through. You heard some of them: Tarrazú, Brunca, Central Valley, West Valley, Tres Rios, Guanacaste, and the Turrialba Orosi regions. Again, we can go through them, but again, each of these are being divided because they provide different crop profiles. Ourselves at Volcafe in Costa Rica, we have a presence with our own mills in 3 regions or 3 provinces, although we have 5 wet mills and 1 dry mill through which all our coffee converges to export to genuine origin. We have 2 plants in the Tarrazú region, San Diego, which is our main, and then Anonos, which is a smaller one for micro lots and other different programs to give us not only the leverage of the efficiencies, but also the flexibility to maintain the quality. Then for the Central Valley and the West Valley, we have Santo Domingo and Anonos. And in the southern part, we have another beneficio, which is called Beneficio El General, which name goes after the region, which is called El Valle del General. This is a snapshot of what has been the involvement and production in Costa Rica. You see that maybe it's not that evident on this one because it starts on the 2000s, but it's been a downtrend since the 90s. To give you an idea, in 1990s, we peaked at 3.8 million quintals. Today, we're finding a base at around 2 million, which is almost 50%. It's around 40% reduction because what I told you before, small extension and other stuff. And we're struggling and making our big effort to try to bring it back to around 2.5, hopefully to stabilize it around there. Part of, again, I still have 5 minutes left, so I'll try to speak a little bit about the culture in general. Part of the elements of value of Costa Rica is that we have a big tie to environmental conscience, peace, and social responsibility. Right from our civil war, which was in 1948, the next elected president, as a result of it, banned the army and are reallocating that budget directly to education and Medicare. So right from there, from the early or the late 40s, we already have a solidified health system, a universal health system, but also a bigger budget in terms of GDP dedicated into education, which has given us a higher education level compared to most of Latin American countries. And of course, a lot of basics in terms of social equitativeness in the country. And the other side, nature in Costa Rica has always been very tight. Although we're small, we have a large percentage of our territory, which is under some level of conservational system, which is over 60% of our territory, even though we're very small. So we know and we're clear as a country that if our name is a rich coast, it's because of our nature blessing, but not of the resources. In Costa Rica right now, it's banned, the petroleum extraction in our sea territory, but also in our land territory. And also the mine extraction, such as in gold and other things that may be attractive in other South American countries, in Costa Rica is virtually banned. So again, for us, our biggest or richest thing of our coast, as Costa Rica name goes after, it's our biodiversity in every sense. So again, for us, environmental, peace, social responsibility, and pura vida lifestyle is part of our main backbone of our culture.
Thank you, Rafa. And then logic would probably dictate then that those practices and the structure of your country is probably influencing the price of coffee and why we see coffees from Costa Rica are a little more expensive than other surrounding countries.
Yeah, to give an idea, Jen, even the picking is regulated by law and it has a legal minimum wage, which based on the traceability, transparency, and the competition that we have as a country in terms of sourcing the coffee, it's very usual that most of the farmers will actually have to pay over the minimum wage to attract the pickers. So all the way there is completely regulated. We have an official institute called Instituto del Café that regulates that every margin and share of the production chain is fairly treated. And so these added to the universal Medicare system, minimum wage and other stuff makes, and of course, protecting our environmental biodiversity all adds up into definitely producing coffee in Costa Rica is more expensive, and therefore we need to always be at the edge of the trend to maintain ourselves differentiated and of course justifying that extra cost.
Thank you.
I would like to add that in Costa Rica is the only country that guaranteed that almost 80% of the FOB value is transferred to the producers. So that's really good for farmers here.
That's incredible. So a lot of these factors, you know, with all these factors that you have, can you talk a little bit about the innovation and that surrounds Costa Rican coffee? You know, in earlier conversations we touched on this, but you know, it's always great to see. I always look forward to the summer when we receive all these Costa Rican coffees because you know it's not just washed or natural coffee. It's anaerobic coffee, Terramec coffee. It's the producers are always doing something new, always trying to push the envelope of how coffee can taste and how what you can have in your cup. So can you talk about the main drivers there of what is leading innovation?
We don't take our higher prices for granted, and we acknowledge that we need to justify that extra price that our consumers are willing luckily to pay for it. So even since the 1990s, we always like to be ahead of the norm within the industry. As I told you before, in the 90s, we were the highest productive country in the production in terms of farms then. But once that was a given, it was what we would like to differentiate by having consistency, and also an extra punch in the clarity aspect. Then we became, and that comes from the industrial expertise that we have in the know-how in the industrial conversion of the cherry into green. Then we switched to the fact that we wanted to reduce our footprint in terms of the impact in the industrial aspect of converting the coffee, lowering our consumption of water required within the milling process. That was in the early 2000s. So we invested in that aspect, and now we use 1/10 of the water that needed to be used in the conversion in the milling. These days, of course, again, we need to justify is maintain ahead of it. So there's a lot of innovation and testing, and in the new processes. We developed the honey some years now. We were one of the first countries to start doing this honey process, which is semi-washing the wet parchment when you detach the pulp from the bean. And from there, we've been doing several different levels of semi-washing, all the way to naturals. Once again, other countries emulated all these new innovations, because in the 90s, making a natural coffee was an equivalence of lower qualities. We spin it in the way that we will make a natural coffee from very ripe cherry. So we were able to develop that new niche. And now, once that those are being also emulated in other origins, now we're starting to do the anaerobic process, which is fermenting the coffee without the absence or a very limited absence, existence of oxygen within that process. There's also yeast usage as a catalyst, using regulating the pH and the temperature when you're doing the fermenting, such as in wine, because the more technified you become in that, the more repeatable is through time. We are able to also to make comparisons between the cup profile and these variations. So that's how we've been able as a country to come up with these new cup profiles, which again, we need to keep differentiating ourselves from the rest.
Sounds really challenging. What about, I mean, how is it being a farmer, Carlos and Max, you know, with all the innovation, with trying to stay ahead of the curve? Can you speak to that, either of you?
Yeah, well, as a farmer, for example, a lot of, as Rafa is saying, a lot of farmers have tend to go into the micro milling because it's always, you can get a bit of more profit out of just selling the cherries, but still there's a lot of, you got to learn how to mill the coffee. I actually was the engineer for San Diego for 4 years. So I started my micro mill after I got all the school and all the tricks out of San Diego, pretty much. And and I did my own little recipe for what I can do in my mill. But farming and milling is two different worlds. And I can mill a little bit of my farm, but farming is a whole different world, which Riley knows all about. And he's actually helping me and Max and doing better for being more efficient cost-wise and higher productivity. So, and this what Riley is helping us to do. It's pretty much what he does with every other farmer. And if these farmers want to actually go into the micro mill, they got to bet on knowing what they're doing, because they can spoil they can ruin the coffee by not milling it properly, and that'll be of great economical loss. So it's, you got to learn what you're doing, and this innovation wise, the new varieties, like the climate change, is something any farmer of any agricultural product, not only coffee, there's this whole terms of climate and rain, and if it doesn't rain when you need it to rain, there's a lot of things you cannot control. So these new varietals that may be stronger against different diseases and more productive. So yeah, that's the, regarding innovation, that's, I think that varietals and the density of how you farm it, how you put the plants on the if it's either 5,000 plants for a hectare or 4,000, there's a whole lot of things that are being taken into consideration that maybe they were done 40 years ago and they stopped doing it for some reason, and now they're going back to it. And yeah, so it's you gotta test, and you know, just what's the word for it, like
Trial and error.
trial and error, yeah, exactly, and trying out to figure out what's the best recipe.
Just to add um, a little bit, one of the biggest challenge for Costa Rican farmers is that the average age of the owners, it's quite old. You know, they are already around 70 or 80 years old. And since Costa Rica has been really successful, all these new generations, they already went to the universities, and they are not really willing to continue maybe with the activity. So it's the challenge for my generation or Carlos' generation to continue with the activity, but coping with our regular works or the other activities. So I really enjoy to help. And let's see, we are here to continue planting coffee from Costa Rica.
Good, because we want to drink more coffee from Costa Rica.
Excellent.
So I have a question that I think a few of you can weigh in on. You know, you'll hear me say on like every event, hey, remember, Genuine Origin is an importing arm of Volcafe Specialty Coffee. That's how we're all connected. But how does the Beneficio San Diego Mill play in? How is it connected? Can we hear a little bit about the history there? And then we're going to talk about Jaguar as well.
Sure, Jen, I can hop in on that.
Thank you.
So the wet mill San Diego is one of the 3 principal mills that we have here in Costa Rica that Rafa touched on in the opening presentation. And as you said, Volcafe Costa Rica is Genuine Origin's sister company. San Diego is one of the largest, it's the largest private mill, and it was founded in 1888, so it's also one of the oldest. But in addition to being both one of the largest and oldest, it is always focusing on this topic of innovation and renewing the ways that it can be more efficient and improve the quality of the coffee. But what's really special about the San Diego Mill is it focuses on processing coffee from the Tarrazú region, which we call the nursery for the gourmet coffee here in Costa Rica. So in the San Diego Mill, we receive coffee from over 2,000 small producers. Well, they're of all sizes, but the average producer size is about 3 hectares. So really the efforts of the mill is to try to maintain that quality that the producers deliver to us, and yeah, keep the quality high and respect the work of the farmers. I think Max can give us some more details on the Jaguar project.
It's a favorite of ours, and people are so excited to see it back. And I think we know it's a delicious coffee. That part is out of not a question. The question, I think, is more like, where did the Jaguar project come from? How did we get here?
Okay, well, this is a project that we started in 2010. And as I remember well, we sold like only $5 the first year, but nowadays we sell pretty much more coffee. And until now, we already raised almost like $40,000. And through this almost 10 years, we decided to finance like different projects. So basically, the first project was to finance a workshop, and we bring like the specialists from Costa Rica. And that year also there was also some participants from other countries, and they came here to Costa Rica to discuss the best strategies for the conservation of the jaguars and the wildcats in Costa Rica, because at the end we choose the jaguar as the main subject, but also you cannot create conservation strategies if you don't include the rest of the wildcats. Last year in 2018, we did again another workshop with the participation from specialists from the United States, Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Panama. Also again to discuss conservation strategies for ex situ and in situ species. Ex situ is when the animals are like in conservation centers or zoos, and in situ when they are in the forest, let's say. And that year, we also decided as Volcafe that we will start to promote the conservation of wildcats in Central America. So in total, there are like six species. And this year, for example, Guatemala is starting to promote the puma as a brand to sell coffee also, and also to raise money. So they are working with, in this case, with Pantera, that it's an NGO that works there in the field. Here in Costa Rica, we work with Fundazoo, that is an NGO that administrates the Costa Rican Zoo and a conservation center. The project of this year is related to COVID. Zoos around the world, and Costa Rica is not the exception, are struggling with the budget because they don't have visitations and they cannot feed the animals. So we decided to finance all the food that the wildcats needs in these conservation centers where we work. And basically that's what we are doing. We will share later a video with all of you that we are preparing. in the next days, but that's basically, if you have more questions later, I will be glad to send or to share all this information.
Thank you, Max. I appreciate all that info. Heads up to everybody, Rob's going to put up a poll. There it is, a little Costa Rica poll for you. And then I think, Riley, we've been talking a lot about kind of the specifics to Costa Rica and productivity and quality. Would love to hear kind of some of what you're experiencing out in the field, what's working, what's not working, what you're learning.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So in the field, we've seen an evolution of our focus in the work we do with farmers over the last few years. I've worked for the company for 10 years with the farmers, and initially we were basically working with them to improve their social and environmental practices. So lots of the work was focused on training them in fair payment and in occupational health and safety at the farm, and basically looking for the farmers to have a higher awareness towards their natural resources and their communities. So that has allowed us to certify a lot of coffee. Lots of these farmers have eradicated practices that the market frowns upon and have now been able to access sustainable markets. But since in the last 5 years or so, we've changed our focus towards implementing what we call the Volcafe way, which is in our, for us, it's really focused on the farmer's main issues and what are really the issues putting him out of the coffee business, which are economic issues that we've mentioned quite a bit before already. Costa Rica is a very expensive country to live in, but also to farm coffee in, the most expensive in all of the region, in fact. So for a farmer to be successful and for the future generations like Max and Carlos to still be interested in coffee, it has to be profitable. And so we're really focusing on the production systems, how they're farming the coffee, focused on reducing that cost per unit produced. So basically, we're trying to help farmers produce more coffee like their ancestors used to be able to produce per hectare and per plant. And so that their ultimate cost will be lower and they'll make more money for every bag they sell. So this is the work we're carrying out right now in 3 of the regions with model farms. Carlos, I'm actually working directly with Carlos and his family in Monte Alto. And as he mentioned, we're looking at changing varieties, changing the distances between the plants, and pruning these plantations in a systematized way to ensure that every year they have a production that will cover their costs and make a profit margin for the farm, and hopefully in a positive trend, so that year after year the farm is making more money. So this is really the interest of farmers of all sizes across the country. That's the challenge. And lots of our traditional ways of farming weren't business focused. So that's the work we're doing, still along the lines of sustainability and complying with all of our local environmental and social laws, which are plenty, and also with third-party certifications.
Thank you, Riley. Yeah, some of that, if y'all have been working with us for a while, or if you've been watching any of these webinars, some of that should absolutely sound familiar. Volcafe Way, model farms, and y'all know that I can gripe about the word sustainability because I feel like it doesn't mean anything anymore, which is why we always qualify it with sustainable profitability. We want farmers to be making more money, and this is how we get there. So Rafa, unless you wanted to chime in, I have another question.
I have a question that it was sent to me.
Yes.
One of our fellow invited people, thank you for the question, is regarding or specifically about the Laurina variety.
That's where I was going next. Perfect.
Great. So we're connected all. Okay, part of what we try to bring to the table through Genuine Origin is not only to find the best coffees in Costa Rica, but also under the premise that Costa Rica, by nature, is more expensive, is to improve or bring options on which not only they're unique, exotic, but also the price and value are very attractive for the buyer. Because after all, we're clear that our friend roasters also have a tough business to run, and therefore this always have to be a dynamic. So Laurina specifically is a very exotic variety which was brought to Costa Rica through one of the best known coffee farmers in Costa Rica, which is the Vargas family. They're currently one is the current largest producing family family in Costa Rica, and they have a very knowledgeable people within the family. Some of them focus into the agricultural aspects, some of them in genetics, some of them in milling. So the genetic sibling brought it in an experimental manner from Brazil. They, through over 10 years, I think it's been 15 years now, they've been adapting this variety to Costa Rica. It's still a very low yield variety. It's important to note that it's an Arabica variety. And of course, its biggest attractive is that it's the only coffee that naturally is low content of caffeine, meaning that it's around, I believe, 0.3% of caffeine in a natural manner. So for those that are very into having a nice cup of coffee without the extra energy or the extra boost of the caffeine, that is a coffee that naturally and given by nature will give you a low caffeine content. And we've been copying it after they was fully adapted in Costa Rica. This is in the Poas volcano skirts. And it has been providing not only an Arabica nice cup, but over 85 plus scores. So it's a low caffeine content with a nice cup of, with a nice profile, but also a very unique thing because the production is super scarce, even within Costa Rica itself.
Cool. Oh, thanks, Rob.
You're muted, Jen. But yeah, thanks, Rafa. I was, on the topic of Lorena and what's coming from this harvest. What else are you seeing in this harvest? Was it what you were expecting? What are you expecting moving forward? Any indicators?
Who's gonna jump in? Was it for me? Sorry. Or
well, it's I think it's for you I think it's for the crowd.
There is an official figure. There hasn't been an official figure yet, but it's like a consensus within the industry that this year the crop is going to be a little bit above what was this 1920 crop, which is somewhere around 2 million quintals, a little bit higher. In the agricultural aspect of the crop, everything looks very good, although we all know that there are a lot of challenges on the scene for everyone. So it still needs to be picked before we confirm the volumes and everything. We're in the rainy season, which is very important for the development of the cherry growth. And the harvest would start in September. And so far, so good. Weather-wise, everything looks very good for the coming crop. Knocking on wood.
Go ahead, Rob. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Jen. That's okay.
Oh, I was just going to say, I feel like in talking about challenges and trends and all of this stuff, we would be remiss to not bring up Cordillera del Fuego at some point in this conversation. So I was thinking about this earlier when you were talking about consistency and clarity, and those coffees are really lovely. And people were really excited about them last year and happy to see them come back this year. I know we had a few competitors in US Coffee Champs using those coffees. I think part of this, granted, is my own personal interest, but how did that relationship come about? And are there things we could maybe expect to see in the coming years from that mill as well?
Absolutely. I would put my hands on fire in favor of Cordillera del Fuego. We bet on that project right from the beginning, not without knowing what was going to come out, because of the farmer himself. His name is Luis Eduardo Campos. He's been a farmer, I think, even since he was born. He was originally, and he's always been driven and looking for something extra within the industry. When he was a small farmer, he was part of a cooperative. When this cooperative went into financial problems, had to close down, he developed a new system of a methodology of a group of farmers, and they set up a mill, a commercial mill, that they grew from a few thousand bags, which it seems like a lot, but not even getting into the micro thing, and he grew it all the way to over 100,000 bags. Then he saw that the next trend was to do the micro lots, so he separated from this project, and he started with Cordillera del Fuego, which is his own single estate, single mill micro mill. So he's been a board member from the Instituto del Café, so he's always been a leader in trending ever since in the beginning. So right from he started, he was going to experiment with coffee. Although in 5 years ago, we thought that he might be a little bit crazy with all these testings. We knew that he was gonna come with something very unique. So he's been able to perfection the anaerobic process. And right when you were starting to fall in love with the anaerobic, he came out with the thermical, which is to, again, to add some controlling in the ferment process with the temperature. And I'm sure the next year he's gonna come up with something different and better because he's always testing. There's always a clash of lines in our industry that matches wine and beer and many others, on which there are two trends. Those that believe that the quality comes only from the terroir or from nature, and then we protect it all the way to the final consumption. And there are others that believe that that you can also add quality to what nature has given you. We don't believe any of them is better, but I definitely think that he's one of from the second group that is providing a lot of innovation and good things to our beautiful industry.
Thank you. Yeah, I cupped those coffees on Friday, and I cupped the anaerobic and the thermic next to each other, and it was a really fun cupping, and all four roasters getting both of those coffees and doing a really cool, like high-end, just selling those two bags together, I think would be super fun.
I agree. And you see, even within the anaerobics and the thermics themselves, there are some that are more wash profile.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them look more like a semi-wash. For
Mm-hmm.
those that would also like not only what the anaerobic profile brings, but also sometimes a little bit of pulp and fruit flavor, while in others you'll get a little more acidic on the more wash. So again, even in such a small production, because these are all micro lots and that come out in batches of 3 to 5 bags each, still there is a wide range within this specific niche.
So, Rafa, in Costa Rica, what's everybody drinking?
What's everybody drinking? And you mean besides coffee? More coffee?
Not mixed drinks or anything. Thinking about coffee.
Well, we not only have a very high consumption, which is almost 5 kilos per year or over 10 pounds per year per capita, which is pretty high. There are two trends, which is 100% coffee. And also there is one that we inherited from the colonization of the Spanish, which is called the Café Torrefacto, which is a mixture when you roasted it of coffee, but also with sugar. It comes from our cultural inheritance, so we respect that part as well. And also there is the specialty segment. Now there are micro roasters as well here developing regional areas on which they're also bringing all these innovations from the milling and farms all the way to the consumer. So the specialty and better cup profiles are growing a lot, while the more conventional, traditional things are growing. But again, there is just a twist of preference into better coffees as well here. I personally am drinking right now a little bit of the geisha that you just recently included into your menu 2 days ago, which is called a geisha from another state called La Guaria. And, I'm always up for a nice geisha. So we can also bring varietals alone themselves separately, like geisha, di laurina. We also select yellow catuais from the red catuais. So that's a little bit of that. I'm drinking right now a geisha from Poas Volcano.
Blue Zone Coffee.
Have you heard about the Blue Zone? Let them know. Max, please jump in with what is a Blue Zone coffee.
Well, the Blue Zone Coffee, it's many people think that the production in Costa Rica is only like in the Central Valley, Tarrazú, and those areas. But also we produce coffee in the Nicoya Peninsula, and the Nicoya Peninsula is a blue zone area. I don't know if you have heard about this, but there are like only 5 blue zone areas around the world, and it's where people live more than 100 years old.
Wow.
And this coffee is the only coffee produced in a blue zone area in the world, basically.
Oh my goodness. Wow. I didn't know.
There definitely must be something done right on these blue zones for people to live longer.
Yeah.
So that is the only coffee in the world that comes from these blue zone regions.
So is that the guarantee? If we bring in this coffee and people drink it and or roast it, they'll live to.
Yes.
I don't think we can put that on the website.
If they don't live to 100, they can, you know, if they die before 100, they could get their money back.
They can get a
Okay.
refund. Exactly.
Entitled to a full refund. That's really great. Okay, it's amazing. I didn't know about that. You know, on a different health topic, you know, which is sadly it's more morbid. How's Costa Rica pushing through with COVID? How are you dealing there?
And we had a super successful beginning of it. Well, it's hard to say successful and pandemic at the same sentence, but
Well,
relatively speaking,
running a mill.
right when we had the first infection in Costa Rica, again, because we have a very efficient health system and a Medicare system in the country, there was set up right there a declaration of emergency, and there was a lockdown right there. So for the first 60 days, we have single-digit contagions daily, and we were able to flatten the curve. Now we're having already starting a second wave because we have to reopen the country, because again, economies suffer when you have a lockdown. And somewhat we've been leveling because in a let's say a positive way, because even though the contagion keeps on growing, which is something inevitable worldwide, the people in the ICU department centers or casualties are being contained for now. So of course it brings challenges, and coffee is not the exception. Just to give you an idea, in 3 months, the picking will start. And of course, there has to be a lot of controls, sanitary controls in terms of on the picking population, which normally they will migrate from one region into the other, and therefore that they will not spike or increase the contagion. So you know that the part of our idiosyncrasy is that we have a lot of immigrants coming from Panama and from Nicaragua. And we need to find a balance between allowing that immigration coming into the country to help in the labor force, but without having to compromise in the health control. So that is the first immediate challenge that we have with the COVID related to coffee in the next 3 months.
Yeah.
Maybe,
Go ahead.
Maybe Riley or Max or Carlos can speak to, you know, being there working with farmers. You know, what's your firsthand experience with trying to stay safe on the farms?
I'll step in. We had, well, for the first few months when the pandemic came about, we had to kind of stop working. We weren't visiting farms. Our day-to-day job is in the field with the farmers. So that work was put on hold for about 2 full months until the point when we had developed a protocol in which, and the conditions in the country were, we are now given a green light to go back to work if we had a protocol in place. So we discussed that internally with our safety people in the company, and following the government guidelines as well, so we could go back and have one-on-ones with the farmer, always respecting social distancing and using face masks and all of the precautions. So we've now gone back to work, and as Rafa mentioned, our next line of business with the farmers will be preparing them for the harvest, because that's when the number of people in the farms will really increase. For the time being, the work on a farm doesn't require lots of density, lots of people sharing space, so it can go about. But once the harvest begins towards the end of the year, then farmers will have to put precautions in place to keep themselves safe from workers coming in from elsewhere, and from keeping the farms from being places where the disease will grow. So I mentioned how before our social work was all aimed towards health and safety at a farm level. So now our focus is changing towards health. It's still health and safety, but how to address COVID on a coffee farm. So the government is now working with us as well, and we're keeping track of what the Ministry of Health is saying in coordination with the Institute of Coffee, so we can adhere to those guidelines and kind of assist the government in getting the word out and making sure that by the time the harvest is here, that everyone will know how to keep themselves safe, keep themselves and others safe as well.
I was waiting to see if anybody else wanted to weigh in. Thank you for that, Riley. A couple of things that have come in from the audience along these lines. Is the government providing any support? How do you handle harvest with people migrating and COVID? Like, how does that all factor in?
Well, you know, here in Costa Rica, we have the Coffee Institute of Costa Rica. So they are basically the government, and they regulate all the activities around coffee. And yes, this is the biggest concern for the harvest. And what they are doing is that they have like a close relation with the Ministry of Health and Migration, and they are preparing all these protocols to be able to bring indigenous from Panama or Panama people, and also from Nicaragua. But from Nicaragua, it's a big issue because, you know, Nicaragua is basically, they are not doing nothing to control the COVID. So probably they will not allow Nicaraguans to come to Costa Rica. I also know that they are talking with the ACNUR. You know, ACNUR is the Commission for the refugiados, for the refugees. Yes, for the refugees. So they are trying to allow all the refugees that are in Costa Rica to work in the field. They harvesting the coffee. Also, the last things that I know is that they are preparing a loan and for the farmers to construct housing for the farmers in proper conditions to help them to do it in a good way, basically.
Yeah, also the cafe, the Coffee Institute is also like during the social networks, they're doing this really strong campaign about, because of the COVID, leaving people out of work. They're like, hey, we need a lot of people working in the farms, and they're even doing like a registry online. So they're like estimating we need 70,000, 80,000 people for the harvest. So if you want to enroll or register online, you can do it and let us know where you live. So what farms you can attend to, and they already called me like, what are your situations? How many people are you gonna need? And yeah, so the thing is, Costa Ricans have not like they haven't been used to picking coffee for a while, and the neighbor countries, they're like really good at it, and so it's pretty tricky because you need them, but you need to protect ourselves. But still, like my farm, for example, we do have this housing, and usually we have 40 people staying in there. And right now, what we're thinking is that Icafe talk to me and like, okay, how many rooms do you have? How many people are you gonna let in? And having all those measures, but they're doing it for anybody or any farms that have this housing provided to. But hopefully, we're gonna have unemployed Costa Ricans that need the money, the income, registering online and going at it. Like, yeah, because it's really worrying for the farmers. If we don't pick the coffee, we'll lose the harvest. So, so hopefully we can have our own Costa Ricans going back to the field and doing the job ourselves.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, it's been really interesting and a little bit scary to just think about what the implications of this could be for the industry. Not to totally shift gears, but to shift gears a little bit. You know, one of the things we get asked about a lot is what can, as far as genuine origin customers and what we're sourcing from Costa Rica, what can we expect to see in the next year? I know someone in the audience was asking about Villa Sarchi, if there's any potential there. I know for my end of things, Costa Rica has been the place where we find the most, not the most, but where we tend to find some cool, exciting, high-scoring coffees. What do y'all see on the horizon for that? Don't everybody go at once.
Sorry, I had it on mute. You know that I will not stay quiet for more than a minute and a half.
This is the thing I know about you, yes.
It's just that it was on mute. Something that we find that is, again, hard to find in Costa Rica is single varietals, because part of our know-how, or let's call it expertise in the agricultural aspect, is that it's very hard for a farmer, or it's rare to find a farmer that will have one single variety planted. Normally they mix them because each of one of them has a different behavior in terms of the environment and the terroir on which it's planted, the sunlight, the rain, and so and so. And because of that, and through the expertise and the support of our technicians such as Riley, they will normally have different varieties even though the farm may be small. Having said that, therefore, that's how we try to bring single varietals. We brought some that had been commonly asked, of course, because all the time every people like something a low caffeine one. So we have the Laurina. Geisha, everybody looks for a geisha. Yellow Catuais, because every time you guys go to Tarazu, for instance, you see all these ripeness all together, yellow one side, red in the other one, and then the mixed. So we separated that. Villa Sarchi has become more and more popular because the cup profile is very high, the resistance to rust is very good, and also the productivity performs very well. So now that we know that we have a demand for it, we definitely can sort it out from a specific farm and prepare it. We're already accepting pre-orders for next year. So whoever made the question, you just say how much coffee you want and we will have it specifically picked for him, for you, for the Villa Sarchi.
Thank you.
We're taking already orders.
Order from Costa Rica.
Well, it's getting to be about time to wrap up. So if viewers out there, if you have other questions, you are welcome to get in touch with myself, Cindy, and Jay. Our contact info is all on the Genuine Origin Contact Us page, email and phone numbers. You can also find us you can find Genuine Origin on social media and hit Rob up that way. And so now all the business that I waited for. We are working on more Costa Rica micro lots. I know the boss is cupping some stuff, and hopefully we're going to see more Cordillera del Fuego. We might see a little more Gesha. Stay tuned for those. I will be cupping Guatemala's next Friday, not this Friday, next Friday, the 26th at 10 a.m. Pacific on Genuine Origin's Instagram. A lot of those coffees are in the warehouse now. Well, like Candelaria and Cabulco are. La Marina and San Vicente Pacaya are on the way. We will see Indonesia's and Honduras landing in the Pennsylvania warehouse in the coming weeks. And there's even more that hasn't gotten posted yet, but it's coming. One thing, a little nitpicky thing that I was really excited for is you can now see specific warehouse inventory. If you visit a coffee page, you can see East and West Coast inventory, which should make it easier to estimate your delivery times. We have a Peru webinar that we're working on, so excited about that. And there are still Costa Rica coffees available for purchase, which, look, we love these conversations, but we also want you to buy this coffee because it's delicious. Such as Monte Alto. Monte Alto and Termico there are still boxes remaining, not very much. There's not very much Larina left either. Anaerobic is sadly sold out, but like I said, we're trying to get more.
It's on the way already. It will depart in the next, hopefully in the next couple of weeks.
Perfect, thank you. You know more than I do. Nobody tells me anything. But
We want it to be a surprise for you.
Yay! We have plenty of San Diego and Jaguar honey, and if you haven't already heard me say it 900 times, those are the same coffee. If you sample one, you've sampled both. The difference is that donation that Max talked about to fund a zoo for jaguar preservation. So I'm really excited you all could join us. I know it's been really fun to see what coffees we've been bringing in from Costa Rica and get to see all the work that you're doing. And we really appreciate you taking the time to sit with us this morning. Rob just put up our exit survey. Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us today as well. So I think that's kind of it, Rob, unless you've got anything else.
I just wanted to say thank you to the Vol Cafe.
Yeah.
Team, and thank you for sending us such wonderful coffees. This
Totally
was so good. Everything's lining up very well, and our roasters are loving it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I would like to say something on behalf of Costa Rica, just in case I haven't spoken enough. I wanted to thank all the audience and all the buyers from Costa Rica and coffee. We know it's expensive, but really appreciate your support and the trust in the coffees. We'll keep on trying to bring you new stuff. So once again, thank you for supporting our efforts here in Costa Rica. Pura vida.
Thank you all so much.